My name is Kathleen Mcvey and I'm an artist from Fife in Scotland. My work encapsulates my own experience with bipolar type 1 disorder and mood dysregulation. I communicate and interrogate the complexities and extremities through a personal language of jar and mark making and representational forms. My research explores the challenges of severe mental illness, creating a visual narrative of experiences with the intent to interact with and create a necessary dialogue around mental health to society at large. Exposing serious mental illness is a vital part in gaining public recognition and addressing a vastly misunderstood community. I see the world in a completely unique way, I believe, to most other people apart from schizophrenics, bipolar people and people with schizoaffective disorder. A lot of people think that we are in touch with a different realm. I don't believe this. I find it really distressing to be in episodes, and I find hallucinating to be not the best thing in the world. But I suppose on the back of that, people love a tortured artist, and I think I could be classified as one. Currently, I'm focusing on my medical records, which I've just recently got access to through my general practitioner, as a reminder of the psychotic episode that I was in my early 20s, which was the biggest psychotic break that I've had, the longest one, and the most both distressing and interesting. From that, it sparked a lot of memories that I can feel and see. An example of this would be when I was walking along the street and people were pushing me over, trying to push me, so I fell and I could feel them pushing me like they were trying to scrap me. But there was no one there, and that was an experience to go through and very confusing when you're in one of these episodes. Another that comes to mind is when I was in McDonald's eating chicken nuggets and they tasted exactly like Granny Smith apples, and I was full of a lot of elation at this point, and colours were so vivid, and every detail of every fibre, of every bit of fabric that I saw was so amplified. It was like I was looking through a magnifying glass at the entire world, and the world was looking back at me whilst I was in conjunction with this overwhelming feeling of love. How do I convey that to an onlooker? And this is a challenge that I'm having, but something that I'm focusing on, and I'm working on. How do I deliver a thing that most people in the spectrum of their emotions, which are unique to all of us, will never experience? And how do I convey that to the onlooker, and how do I convey this awareness of complete insanity but beauty at the same time? Currently, the biggest challenge of being an artist is lack of time to produce and lack of money to sort of supply materials. I think I go by the ethos of make art to sell art to then make art, because it's something that I have to do. But on the back of that, I think for me the biggest challenge is having a disability, and that minimising the amount of time I am able to work in order to finance my art. Financing studio spaces is really challenging, especially in today's climate when we do have the Tories governing us, and the comparisons between how artists are treated now to say the 90s is huge. But I think apart from me being disabled, I share the same issues as other artists, which is lack of time, lack of money, and sort of lack of respect for the arts in general. People expecting you to sell at a lower rate than you really should. Our art is worth a lot more than what people think often. Advice to my younger self would be to not jump into things. This is difficult when you do have a mood disorder that acts on impulsivity, but I'm going to assume that I would be stable at this point. I would say, like, step back, consider things before you do them. Maybe go to college before jumping into university. But then at the same time, I don't regret anything that I've done. So maybe I wouldn't give myself any advice. I'd just let her do what she wanted. I have tried unconventional mediums. I think the way that I paint is unconventional. I mean, I think with art in general, most things have been done before and they're just sort of upcycled. But for me, an integral part of my paintings is to use texture, and as I add the texture, then strip it back in a way that mimics drawing, where I slice at things with scalpels. I basically use it as a punching bag often with paintings, where I do sometimes literally punch the paintings. So I usually paint on board, large scale, around 6 foot by 6 foot, building up the layers of, say, wood filler, ink, acrylic paint, like piling it on, and then going back in and refining things in quite an aggressive manner, to be honest. But currently, as I'm in a relatively stable state, I'm working on printmaking and collagraphs, which would be a sort of minimised version of that. I still get to stab things with scalpels, which is great. When I work, I prefer silence. This allows me to get in touch with the emotions that I'm going through currently, or act as a reminder and almost a meditative state to bring back whether it be the emotions or the hallucinations that I'd suffered from the past, to express that visually. If I'm trying to spark an agitation within me, this might sound odd, but I like to listen to YouTube videos of Margaret Thatcher. Sometimes I throw in Boris Johnson just for the crack. Best reaction that I've had to my work was an older woman who had a sister with bipolar disorder in the same kind as me, and it sparked her to communicate to me about her sister. And she said, this isn't something that I really talk about. Like, in my generation, it was a shameful thing. And she thanked me for being so open about my experiences, and I think that's a good thing. Like, we are stepping forward a lot when it comes to mental illness. I mean, it's still not as known as physical illnesses, and then also to expand from that, the serious mental illnesses are completely disregarded. Like, we're completely separate to how people view, like, say, anxiety and depression, for example. But that really had an impact on me. And then on the back of that, I will say probably the best reaction I've had is somebody spending $3,000 on one of my paintings. That was good fun, because money. I hope from seeing my art, at its most basic root, is that they gain a bit of knowledge about the illness that I have. They maybe consider serious mental illnesses as existing, and it sparks an interest to learn about them. I also hope that it brings an understanding and a communication between what used to be known as outsider artists to artists to then the general public. And I really hope that in some way I'm contributing to the destigmatization of having a serious mental illness, and that we are and can be functioning, thriving members of this society without being glamorized in the media, or like refrain to being disabled and insane. Yeah. If you would like to follow the progression of my work and see the actual visuals of it, please follow me on my Instagram, which is at kathleen.mcvey.artist. Upcoming, I'm working with the Hindor Festival in Edinburgh, and going from there, I will be continuing my own development.